Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. Hopefully, you can hear me okay. If there's anybody out there in the chat, let me know. Tonight, what we're going to cover is we're going to talk about stagflation, recession fears, and their impact on the housing market. So, there's a lot of talk out there about recession. So, we just thought I would bring that up in a couple of articles tonight. And then why this matters is because this was supposed to be a year of more normalization, but as you can imagine, this is anything but a normal year. So let me know in the chat, are you feeling more or less optimistic or cautious about the market this year? So let me know in the chat if you would. So we'll go ahead and kick off this first article. And let me bring it to the now, and here's the other thing that I want to mention too, and that's whenever there's an article out there, you always got to consider the source. So this one is from realtor.com. So obviously, any article out there written by anybody is going to have some sort of spin on it. So you just want to keep that in mind because anytime somebody's selling something, they're trying to, look from a realtor.com standpoint, they're in the business of selling advertising, and they obviously want a robust housing market. So anyway, just keep that in mind. Rising fears of a recession and stagflation. Should homeowners be concerned? Okay, and it says fears of a stagflation have turned to worry about a recession as economic growth stalls and inflation remains stubbornly above the Federal Reserve target of 2%. So in January, it was at 3%, and now it went down to 2.8% was last month. Hopefully, home buyers and sellers are equally, or excuse me, hopeful home buyers and sellers are equally uniquely frustrated. This was to be their year. So, after the highs and the lows of the past 5 years, 2025 was expected to bring much needed dose of normalcy back to the housing market. Okay. Anytime we're talking about the housing market, there's one thing that is certain, and that is it's constantly changing. So, um, uh, but the economic buzzwords du jour have many homeowners, buyers, and sellers concerned that they're about to be taken for yet another ride. So, should homeowners be concerned about a recession or stagflation in the year ahead? In the year ahead, honestly, probably not. And here's why. Well, what do they mean by when we talk about recession? What's the difference? Okay, the technical definition of recession is 2 consecutive quarters of negative gross domestic product growth. But this definition is of little use to anyone other than economists or policymakers, largely because it's backward looking. You can't tell you're in a recession until you've been in one for 6 months. Okay, so looking back, I'm going to share this with you. This is from Trading Economics, and this is the GDP in the United States for the past 10 years. And you can see back in 2020, during the pandemic, we had negative economic growth of the second quarter of 2020 was at negative 7.5%. And then the third quarter was at negative 1.4. And then in the fourth quarter of 2020, it was negative 1%. But again, that was a self-induced recession. And then you can see as we came out of it in the second quarter of 2020, we came right back out of that thing. So 12.5% growth. But at the same time, we had a lot of inflation back then as well. So right now, this fourth quarter of 2024, we're at 2.5%. Now, the forecast, and this is from the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, their latest estimate is at a negative 1.8%. So it'll be interesting to see if we have negative growth this first quarter. So let's get back to the article. Okay. Um, More broadly, recessions are periods of widespread economic downturn with a sharp spike in unemployment that slowly ebbs. And recessions are a normal part of the business cycle. Okay. And just because you're in a recession doesn't mean home prices come down. Okay. And I want to bring up another chart here. This is, I'll share this one here. This is the median sale price. And hopefully you can see that okay. This is the median sale price of homes sold in the United States going back to way back into 1963. And these vertical shaded areas are recessions. And you can see that recessions are a normal thing. They occur. And you can see that the one in 2020 was a real very brief recession. And then we had the great financial crisis in 2008, and everybody is familiar with that recession. And that's where we did see home prices go down. But here's the other thing about home prices and recessions. Different markets are affected by recessions differently. Not everybody participates equally in a recession. In a market like Omaha, we don't tend to get invited to the party, so we don't get the hangover. We don't have the high highs and the low lows that you see in other markets. But and just to kind of show you that, I'll share the this screen here. Let me pull this up. And let me just give me a second here. And let me share this tab with you. Okay. And this is home prices going back in the local MLS in our, this is the entire MLS. Let me look more. I'll just do Douglas and Sarpy County. Okay. And you can see that home prices, and this is month to month fluctuation. Okay. And you can see there's month to month fluctuation, but home prices in the Omaha market did not tank. And we'll kind of do this on a rolling 12-month average, and that's going to smooth out that line. But you can see that prices did go down slightly, but they didn't tank a whole bunch. Okay, so that's the Omaha market. All right, let me get back here. Oh, I didn't. Hopefully, I shared that okay. All right. All right. Oh, we got somebody in the chat. Excellent. Okay, Crystal Cat T says hello from Sioux City. Okay, Crystal, welcome to the live stream. Okay, and Crystal says, I'm thinking of moving Omaha when I retire. Should I make any plans ahead? I think you should, and I think you want to. Just out of curiosity, what made you choose? Maybe you don't want to. We don't have to do that in the chat or whatnot. But I was interested to see what's bringing you to Omaha in terms of retiring. I've seen a lot of people move from Omaha to South Dakota because of some of the tax friendliness of South Dakota. So I had a client do that not too long ago. So it's interesting. A lot of folks, when they're retiring, everybody, for whatever reason, a lot of it's family driven and that sort of thing. Hey, we got Clark. Okay. Hey, Clark, I got a funny story. Clark, you're going to enjoy this. One of my clients today said his, I see Clark on your live stream. Is he, related to you, or is he your brother? Is he your son? And I'm like, no, Clark is not my son. So thanks, Clark, for joining us on the stream tonight. So anyway, going back to, let's see, MHOH is back. Lived in South Dakota for 10 years. Okay, I don't know. Okay. All right, awesome. Well, thanks, folks, for chiming in. But we've seen in this recession, the prices went down. Okay, Crystal says, all right, I like Omaha. I got more. It got more going on than Sioux City, and I visit Omaha twice a year. And I think that is absolutely true. I think we have a lot of good things going for us. I think there's a lot of fun stuff to do. And since doing the channel, it's kind of amazing how when you live somewhere and you're not fully aware of everything that is available. So having the channel has kind of let me kind of relive some of that stuff. So I think that's a lot of fun, and I agree with that. All right. All right. Okay, Clark says, me, you, and MH are all related. Okay. And we move a lot. Okay, I really appreciate the chat this evening because I'm flying solo, and it's a little more challenging when you don't have a guest on board. Clark, I got to have you on as a guest here, so stay tuned. I'll bring Clark on the show and everything. But I wanted to share like the recession back in the early 80s. Okay, there was a recession when Ronald Reagan first took office. Now, I was just 12 years old at the time, but I remember in the early 80s, there was a really severe recession in the early 80s. And during that time, home prices, if you can see this or not, I don't know if I'll try to make it a little bit bigger, maybe. Hopefully that helps a little bit. But in the early 80s, when Ronald Reagan first took office, home prices went up slightly. Okay. And when I show you the interest rates during that time, if you look at the interest rates, the 30-year fixed rate mortgage in the early 80s, okay, this is the 30-year fixed rate mortgage average in the United States. In the early 80s, it was 18%. Okay, so what the what happened during that time, we had a Fed chairman back then by a guy by the name of Paul Volcker, and we had inflation in the coming out of the 1970s. And what they were trying to do was to kill inflation. And so they raised interest rates to kill inflation. Well, they raised interest rates, they killed inflation, but they also put us into recession. So, but even during those high interest rates back then, prices did not go down. Now, there's another component to this, and a lot of people don't mention this, and that is during the early 1980s, who was buying homes back then? Well, it was baby boomers buying those homes. It was baby boomers were in their 30s. So if you look at the greatest generation, they came back from World War II and they started the baby boom. And so all of those baby boomers were coming of age and buying homes in the early 1980s. Okay. And so that's what kept prices from tanking, even though we had high interest rates back then. So I think that's kind of interesting. Okay. Let's see. We got some more in the chat. Crystal says the buses in Sioux City don't run past 6 and not on Sunday. Okay, good to know. Okay, and then MHOH says at least it's not Lamar's. Okay, and Crystal says I was born there. Okay, excellent. Okay, all right, that's a story time. Okay, so anyway, I appreciate that, guys and gals. So, but anyway, what I want to point out is, oh, Clark has. Clark says, and now the baby boomers are keeping this market afloat. How interesting, history repeating itself. And Clark, the other thing with that is who are the children? There's a thing called an echo boomers, and those are the millennials. Okay, so we're still seeing some of that now because that is a big chunk of today's market. Are the millennials right now are in their mid 30s, and they're the children of the baby boomers, and that's helping keep prices higher as well. So yeah, it's interesting. All right, excellent. Okay, we'll go back to the article here. Um, Stagflation is rare, more complicated condition characterized by slow or no economic growth, high inflation, and high unemployment. The economy of the US in the 1970s, as an example, when you have a confluence of supply chain issues, geopolitical factors, and monetary policy sent prices and unemployment soaring in high interest rate environment. Okay. The crucial difference between a recession and stagflation is that recession is considered a natural cycle of an economy, while stagflation is not. If you look back to 2023, some economists thought that a recession was necessary to cool the economy and reset the market after rapid growth of 2021 and 2022. Stagflation, however, does not have this resetting effect. Instead, stagflation puts policymakers, oops, lost my, puts policymakers in an impossible bind. Lower interest rates to encourage hiring and lower unemployment, but risk sending prices even higher. Or raise interest rates to bring prices under control, but can cause an increase in already high employment. So, what will happen is during a recession, that's not necessarily, if you're in a recession and you lose your job, trust me, that's not a good thing. But if you're a home buyer and if you're in a position to buy and we go into recession, that creates an opportunity. Um, so that, because what they'll do is they'll lower interest rates in order to stimulate the economy. So uh, that's why how a recession affects the housing market. Oh, Crystal had another. I'm sorry. When you're streaming, you got to share the tab. So I'm reading the article and not sharing the article with you guys. So I apologize for that. Let's see. Crystal says, and there are good apartments. Okay, terrific. And there's a lot of apartments going up in Omaha. It's almost shockingly so. And I think that also says something else too, that um, I've never, let me know in the comments section, guys, if you're seeing more apartments being built in your neck of the woods, because we just have an abundance of apartments going up in the Omaha area. And I think that also says something else too, and that is the folks that are building those apartments are going to obviously going to be the well-off and smart folks. They're seeing that, obviously, the days of being 23 years old and being able to buy a first time, three bedroom, two bath with 2-car garage and be able to afford a home starting out at age 23 is simply not the case now. So, and I think that's the case. All right, MHOH says, I thought stagflation was having one too many. Okay. Clark laughed at that one. Okay. Um, am I asked, is there good apartments? There are a lot of there's a lot of new apartments being built in our marketplace. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on. Interested to see if other people are seeing that as well. A lot of parts. Clark is from Atlanta, okay, and he has a lot of apartments being built down here, and they can't fill the units. Huh? Interesting. Okay, excellent. Okay, well, yeah, that's a little surprising. Okay. Um, we're getting Soviet style blocks in Denver. Okay. Okay. Uh, we got an apartment, but a good apartment is hard to find. Lots of them, yep, are rougher parts of town. Our lease manager telling me their numbers are down for apartments. Okay, interesting. So, um, yeah, I'm surprised they can fill them, but they are. So, um, okay, we'll go back to uh, how a recession affects the housing market. Generally, in a recession, consumer sentiment decreases and households delay major investments like purchasing a home. in response, the housing supply increases and home prices decline. But that's not always the case. Home prices don't always decline during a recession. Okay, this could have particularly dire consequences in today's market. A recession would knock the wind of already low buyer demand, says Hannah Jones, senior economist, economic research analyst at Realtor.com. Building and sitting inventory could put downward pressure on home prices. But without a healthy labor market, buyers can't keep their side of the supply demand equation. However, this isn't always the case. The brief recession of 2020 sparked a housing boom because of record low mortgage interest rates, bringing a large swath of qualified buyers to the table and sending prices skyrocketing. When you have that kind of low interest rates, okay, the going back, this is going back, I'll share this tab here. There's where interest rates are now, just below 7%. But in, you know, 5 years ago, rates went below 3%, and that is cheap money. So that made things really affordable. Everybody could afford a home, so that meant everybody was out there buying, and that just pushed prices up and up and up. So, and the low interest rates to stimulus money that went out, yeah, they helicoptered money out there, and everybody got checks and everything. When inflation is too many dollars chasing too few goods, that's going to create inflation, and that's what happened. So hindsight's 2020, because companies heard the best thing you can leave your children is property in a house, causes companies are buying up properties and building business. Yeah. So yeah, it's amazing. It seems like, I've been selling real estate for 20 some years, and it just seems like, for a long time, the housing market was not something people always cared about the housing market, but it's not the news that you have on YouTube nowadays. So we'll go back to this article here. Okay. How stagflation affects the housing market. We're not currently in a stagflation scenario, and still strong unemployment and falling inflation signal that the economy is moving in the right direction, says Jones. However, proposed tariffs, tax cuts, and other proposed economic policies introduce real cause for concern about the country's economic future. And that's going to depend on what side of the aisle you sit on and that sort of thing, because everybody's going to have different feelings as far as that goes. People don't like uncertainty, that's for sure. And this tariff on, tariff off type of thing is going to create uncertainty, and people are going to take pause at that. Tax cuts, giving people more money to spend, hey, that's a good thing. And everybody, depends on what side of the aisle you are on as far as that goes. I ever live in an HOA, and then I'll never live in an HOA. And there's plenty of thoughts on that. And then MHOH, or on the side of the road if they don't quit it. Okay. And then Clark, people that have planned everything out are still buying homes, and I've seen more cash buyers lately. And that is true. There's a lot of, I was out showing a home today, $275,000, and guess what? It hit the market today, and guess what? They already had an offer. So buyers are still out there, and there's a lot of folks that have equity because they bought, many years ago, and 38% of, I believe it's 38% of folks don't have a mortgage at all. So should homeowners be concerned? Um, while headlines are flashy about a recession and stagflation, along with federal layoffs and escalating trade war, there's no reason to panic. And that's just the other thing too. It's like you make your own economy. I remember growing up as a kid, um, the early 1980s. My dad was a real estate investor, and the early 1980s was good for him in terms of um, he didn't pay attention to the news or anything like that. He just kept his head down and worked. And if he seen a good deal, he moved on it. He didn't care about what was happening nationally. He just and I think that's a good way of doing things. Um, because there's always going to be bad news out there. There's always going to be um, bad economic news and things like that. If you make your own economy and you live within your means, um, hopefully we have positive economic growth and everybody thrives and everything. But there's even in really good times, there's going to be folks that don't make it. So that's out there. So um, you know my uh, my dad was helping out my sisters, and in the early 1980s, my dad would give he I come from there's seven of us in our family. Okay, so I had six older sisters, and I'm the baby. But my dad would, in order to help out my sisters, he would give them a loan at 10%. So instead of the going rate of 18% back then. So yeah, that I kind of laugh at that. So okay. Crystal, if your parents are getting on in years, make sure you put their property in someone else's name, because if they go to a government nursing home, the government will come and take everything of value. I would say, Crystal, I would talk to an attorney and make sure you structure things accordingly. So, um, you know, I don't, you bring up a good point. I mean, um, that kind of nursing home care is super expensive and that sort of thing, but um, you want to be, I would check with an attorney on that and that sort of thing. I wouldn't just make that. I would double check on that, because there's a lot of things like that. So I would, you know, check on that. And I'm sure there's ways of structuring. That's why you want to talk to an attorney on that one. Uh, he was teaching them early. Yeah, that look back periods also cost basis. Yep. Okay. Um, should homeowners? We'll go back to the article here. Um, should homeowners be concerned? Um, Homeowners who can. And here's the other thing about the real estate market: you got to live somewhere. If you bought a home 5 years ago and the market has gone up and you still have that low interest rate, then there's no reason you're not going to panic because we go into a recession and decide to sell your house. Because guess what? If you go out there and rent, you might have a hard time finding rent for less than what your payment is. Okay. Now, if you go and here's the other thing too, you always, whenever you're buying a home, you got to have some sort of a long-term outlook on things. And you got to have money saved back for a rainy day in an emergency fund. And um, if you don't have, if you don't have an emergency fund, then if you hit hard times, you're going to be in rough shape, because you have nothing to fall back on. And there's so many people nowadays that live paycheck to paycheck, and honestly, they can't. Some of them can't help it. They're just in different situations and everything. But that's why you don't want to go in. Home ownership is not for everyone, and if you want to get to the point where you can buy a home, but if you're um, it takes a lot of maintenance to maintain a home as well. So, um, let's see. Crystal has another comment here. It happened to my friend, even though they went through her mother jewelry box and tried to take her old toys. Jeez, yeah, um, yeah, that's too bad, Crystal. I'm sorry to hear that. That's MH08. I bought mine 20 years ago this month. Okay. And then anytime you're buying homes, you buy a home, when you buy it, you're paying market value for that home. It's going to seem high whenever you buy your home. The people that were buying in 2008, guess what? Back then, that, was, there was times of uncertainty. They were purchasing at the high and they thought, well, you know, what's going to happen? Well, they have to live somewhere. So, um, yeah, just have a long-term outlook on things like that. But congratulations, MH08. I bought mine 20 years ago. You're sitting on a boatload of equity, so good for you. Terrific. Um, let's see. Were you planning to sell in 2020? Planning to sell, and here's what to do. With so much uncertainty in the forecast in 2025, it's best to act now while the economy, housing market is stable. I'm going to push back on that. I think you should only sell when it's right for you. Okay. The best week to sell in 2025 will be April 13th through the 19th, according to research from Realtor.com. Sellers who list during this week are likely to sell for more and to sell faster based on rigorous analysis of historical trends. Capitalizing on peak demand can help home sellers maximize their home sale proceeds despite economic uncertainty. Otherwise, it may be another year of waiting. My thought process is if you have money saved up in numbers in an emergency fund, and if it's the right time for you, then I would just go ahead and buy. But again, I'm not just saying that because I'm a real estate agent. I think nobody can predict the future. Okay, 10 years from now, do you think that home prices will be more or less than they are now? I would venture to say that historically speaking, 10 years from now, prices are going to be higher than what they are now. And so I don't know if, waiting to try to time the market, I just think that's a fool's errand. Nobody can time the market. So let's see. Clark says, yep, it's always seems jarring when you buy, but in the long run, you should gain equity in your property. Absolutely. Yep. Excellent. Okay, and then I want to kind of mention about something else. I thought I had a couple more graphs in here. Um, in terms of, um, let me look at my notes. I want to take a moment and talk about another. Let's see. MH08 says, I did go through the ringer in 2008, 2010 after telling the lender's rep in India that I had no idea when I'd be able to make my next payment. Got somebody in the US immediately. Okay. Yep. And it's, um, um, yeah, and it's a different, the getting a loan nowadays, back in 2008 and during that market, there were people getting, they could get a loan with no, um, and no income. They didn't have to. Now you actually have, if you fogged a mirror back in 2008, you could buy a home. Now you actually have to job and you have to show that you have a job. And they were giving 100% financing, whereas now you have to have a down payment. So the lending requirements have tightened up significantly in order uh, to buy a home now. They just, and that giving somebody a loan that can't afford it is not the way to do things. That's not setting somebody up for success. So, um, oh, MH08 says he fogged a mirror. Okay, Fred says, Fred Sacco. Fred is a friend from Corn Nation. So, um, uh, if you ever want to have a good time, go on Corn Nation's live stream. They have the Five Heart podcast on Thursday evening on Corn Nation, and it's a Husker talk show. And Fred is absolutely hilarious. So Fred says, "Good evening, Mr. Matney. Enjoying the info. I underwent something similar with MH08 during the loan modification. It was a mess and still lingers to this day." Yeah. So, all right. Excellent. So, Fred, thanks for joining us. Thanks for, I have show notes and I had notes and an outline, and, that all goes by the wayside. So, um, Clark says, hit the like button. So, yeah, please do me a favor and hit the like button to the stream. Hopefully, you're getting some value out of this, that sort of thing. Wanted to talk about one more thing, kind of a side note, and that is what a VA assumption is. Okay. Um, Interest rates are at 7% now, but there's an opportunity out there where you can do a thing called a VA assumption. Okay. Now, VA stands for Veterans Administration. And if I have a VA loan, okay, and let's say I bought 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and I have a VA loan and it's at a 3% interest rate. Well, with a VA assumption, okay, a buyer, and a buyer doesn't even have to be a veteran. They can assume my loan. Okay, so that means they would be able to take over my loan at that 3% interest rate instead of a 7% interest rate. Okay, but here's the problem. Okay, let's say I bought a home back in 2021 and I paid $300,000 for that home, and it's a VA assumable loan, and now the house is worth 400,000. Okay, and let's say my loan is paid down to, let's just say, 290. And I hate saying numbers without showing them on the screen because I'm a visual person. I need to actually see the numbers. So hopefully this makes some sense. And that is, as long as now this is the other big caveat, and that is the person assuming the loan has to pay the difference between the purchase price and the loan amount. Okay, so let's say Fred comes in and Fred has $105,000 to cover that difference. He can then assume the loan. Okay, so a VA assumption is a great thing that's out there. The problem is you have to have some money saved up, and you still need to qualify for that loan. And it does take a little bit longer to assume the loan, but a lot of folks aren't even aware that you can assume a loan. Okay, on a VA loan, you can also assume FHA loans, but on a conventional financing, you can't assume conventional financing. Okay, all right. Fred says, "Sorry to break your flow." Fred, you're not breaking the flow. I don't have any flow on this thing, so it is complete. We are perfectly good. Thanks for the comments. That really helps me out. So appreciate that. MH08 said, "I did have a payment plan. I was sticking to it. When confirming a payment, the rep said to fill out a modification application. I did one, trashed the rest, got a letter saying I was approved." Okay, excellent. Yeah, it's going through that loan modification's got to be, anytime you're doing sometimes just dealing with a bank, honestly, is just a headache and a half. Okay. A good example of that is I had a rental house, and when you have damage to a house, the insurance companies has got smarter, and that is, instead, back in the day, they would send you a check for a certain amount of money, and then you would be responsible for putting on the roof or whatnot. Nowadays, what they do, if you have a loan, they make that check out directly to the roofer. Okay, and you got to pay the roofer that check. It doesn't go to you and then you pay the roofer. So, uh, you know, because way back in the day, it seemed like people would, they'd get that check, and instead of buying that new roof, they'd go out and buy a new fishing boat. Well, um, because sometimes if you own rental property, you'd have hail damage, and you're like, well, it's not leaking, so I'll just ride it out a ways. But this was a different case like that. But anytime you're dealing with a bank, an insurance company, I just think it's a pain in the rear to start with. So, um, yeah, it's. Let's see what MHOH has to say. They kept sending me applications. I tossed them in the recycle bin. I have a hunch that was the trick. Yeah, I don't. Yeah. Any other questions out there? Any other questions or comments or anything like that? Anybody else? Uh, and insurance nowadays is just getting to be. Um, it's a real it's a racket. Um, I'll have the insurance agent back on again because it's and you got to plan for when you purchase that home, and that insurance is going to go up, and they're talking about the days of the $500 deductible are long gone now. You're it's 1% or 2% in terms of a deductible and that sort of thing. So it's a whole different animal in terms of the insurance world. um, let's see, Clark. um, do you feel like a recession? This is a great question, Clark. Do you feel like a recession will help bring down the cost of homes, or will they stay steady? Okay. I I don't think that a recession will bring down the cost of homes in the Omaha market. Okay. And again, here's the other thing too, Clark. It depends on the severity of the recession. If we have a really severe job loss, then that could change things. Okay. Um, but nothing. We have a lot of buyers out there that want to buy, that would love to buy, but they can't because they're priced out of the market. Okay. So um, I don't feel like in the Omaha market that a recession will bring down the cost of homes. I think it'll stay steady. That's my take on it, but my crystal ball is as good as anybody else's. But on a national level, um, I think some markets, if a market, if let's say Offutt Air Force Base were to close up shop, the government shut down Offutt Air Force Base, would that bring down the cost of homes in our market? Absolutely, yes. Okay. Um, but the question is that going to happen? And who knows? But yeah, it's uh, you know hard to say. Crystal says, "Having a good night, Crystal. Thanks for tuning in. So excellent. Thank you." Um, this is why you got to tune in with Fred, because yeah, I never ask anybody about their crystal balls. So, okay, all right, Fred. Okay, A says right now it looks like a renter's market, but I also see new construction seems to be a much better deal. Can you please comment on that? Um, a lot of times, if somebody can afford new construction, but here's the problem: anything new construction in Omaha starts around $300,000, so you can get a new um, celebrity homes for starting at around 305. Now it's going to fluctuate, things like that, but that um, when you're below 300,000, 250, 275, there's not a lot of inventory in terms of that kind of a market. So what happens is you're taking a $275,000 home and it's getting bid up. And so if you can afford to take the leap to new construction, then I think you do have a better deal in terms of new construction. Now, if you go to the new construction route, make sure you take your agent with you on that first visit to new construction. Otherwise, they take your agent out of the deal. So, all right, but yeah, that I think new construction does present an opportunity, and I'll bring up the let me show the stats on that here real quick. Um, homes for sale. Let me bring this up. And okay, this right here is new construction in green versus existing homes. So the existing homes in red, we have 1.3 months of inventory in the existing market versus 6 months of inventory in the new construction market. Now, here's the thing on the new construction. They're saying some of that is still under construction. Some of that inventory is at lot stage and framing stage. It's not like we have 6 months of completely brand new, ready to move in new construction. Okay. And here's the other thing too, and that is with new construction, sometimes what will happen is I have one right now where the home is under contract, the home is being built, okay, but the seller or the builder is still advertising as it says contract pending. So what they're trying to do is they're using that home as a lead mechanism to show other buyers this is what's available, and then they can drive by and see it, but it's not available, it's actually under contract. So that's a little bit misleading in terms of the months of inventory, um, but to go with what, and let me break this down by price range. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to break this down by price range. And now this is let me share this. Oh, let me share this. Okay, this is a breakdown by price range. And this is how kind of outdated our MLS is it still shows 99,000 or less in terms of months supply. In terms of actual homes for sale, okay, we have only 9 homes available under 99,000 or less. 20 years ago, you could buy close to a brand new home. This was at the time when we had Hearthstone homes. A new Hearthstone home would go for 100,000, but they almost need to kind of redo the MLS in terms of price structure. But this is how many homes. This is all price ranges. We'll take that out. But you can see between 200 and 400, between 500,000, we have 1,000 homes on the market. But 100,000 to 200,000, there's only 118 homes available. So there's just not many homes in those lower price points. So let's see here. Let's see if we have another question here. Okay. Um, let's see. NA07 says the availability to demand for houses is less than Omaha. Okay. Um, thanks for explaining. Good. I'm glad you got something out of that. I appreciate that. Um, let's see. NA07. Do you think BHHS is messing up the market in Omaha? I'm not going to make any comments about another brokerage and that sort of thing. That's not. I don't know what they're. The market's the market. Homes are still available, so I'm not quite sure if you can kind of elaborate on that a little bit more, maybe, but I'm not quite understand. Now there is a thing, and this is not directed at any one brokerage, but there are things that they call off-market listings where homes are not. It's called a office exclusive listing, and some companies and this is any company can do this. What they'll do is it'll be an office exclusive, which means it's not advertised on the MLS. And this is not directed at Berkshire Hathaway. Any company can do this. Okay, it's called and the seller has to agree to this. Okay, and that is where it's not advertised on the MLS publicly. It's only advertised to the agents within that firm. Okay, so let's say I have a seller, and that seller is like, um, I don't want to advertise my home, and I don't want people. Um, I just wanted to advertise it to your agents. Is all the what an office exclusive listing is. I'm not a fan of those because if I'm just advertising it to my clients and to agents within Nebraska Realty, then you're not getting full exposure. So that's an issue that's been out there, but I don't know of any one company dominating that. But that's not, you know, uh, that's something that's um, out there, but it's not one particular company doing that sort of thing. But is that kind of what you mean? I'm not sure. NAO7, if you're talking about office exclusive listings and that sort of thing. But any company can do that. I mean, so, let's say I ran in really fancy circles and, dealt with $2 million clients and they want to advertise a home, but they only wanted to advertise to, my buyers because they're all, in that $2 million range. Then there's something to, could be a reason for that. But ultimately, it's up to the seller. But I think as a seller, you got to be very careful and really educate yourself on the good and bad on things and that sort of thing. And that goes back to nowadays. And I'm still shocked that, when you're in an industry, you think of something that's so common that everybody knows about it. But a lot of people, I meet people every day where it's like they weren't even aware of this new rule. Now, nowadays, if you want to show somebody a home, okay, let's say, Fred, you want to go look at a home. Before I can show you a home, you have to sign a contract, a thing called a buyer broker agreement, before I can show you a home. Okay. And that's, there was a lawsuit last year, and part of the settlement was this new requirement. So a lot of people aren't aware of that. But here's the thing. I was talking to another client today where, commissions are negotiable. There's no such thing as a standard commission. Commissions are negotiable. And then when you sign that buyer broker agreement, the length of the contract is also negotiable. So you don't want to get locked in to a long, a 6-month contract with an agent unless you want to work with that agent for the next 6 months. So, you can always say, hey, I'll give you a month trial, or hey, I want to make it for just this one particular house. It's all negotiable. So keep that in mind as well. So anyway, Fred says, I see so much new construction in and around Omaha, though it floors me. I don't understand the need, just my perception. And Fred, you got a great point there. You drive down Highway 6 from Elkhorn to Gretna. If you haven't driven Highway 6, that road, 204th Street in Omaha, if you haven't driven that, you would be shocked at how much development is going on along that corridor there. It's amazing. I'm in the business and I'm out there all the time, and I'm still shocked by it. So, yeah, it floors me as well. But I mean, here's the other thing too with the recession. Builders are smart. If we go into a recession, what a builder will do is they will slow down their building. They're not going to just build, because every time that home is sitting there, it's costing that builder money. A lot of builders aren't going to build unless now somebody like a DR Horton or a celebrity, they have a machine that they just keep on building. Okay, but some builders aren't going to start building until they are under contract with a buyer, because they don't want to be sitting on that home vacant. And, every day that's costing them money. That's how a builder goes out of business. Okay. Let's see. But some people are willing to get into one or more than the houses that are being constructed but people who are willing to get into one are more than one of the houses that are being constructed as new or available. I'm not sure I quite understand that. Okay. Um, let's see. Okay, B Loper says my parents bought a house for 45,000, sold it at 85,000, and bought a new Hearthstone home in 2001. Yeah, um, that's the way the market used to be back in the day. Looking back, I should have bought 100 of them. NA07, thank you for clarifying. I didn't mean to put you on the spot with a question about Berkshire Hathaway. No, they're a great company, and it wasn't directed toward them or anything. So if I have anybody from Berkshire Hathaway watching, it wasn't directed that way. I used to be at Berkshire Hathaway one time. Great company. Um, okay. No, it's okay. Let's see here. Wow, this is something new I learned today. Excellent. I'm glad you got something out of there. Okay, excellent. All right. Um, Fred says, yes, Elkhorn to Gretna corridor. It used to be tumbleweeds, blew me away last time I drove through. Yeah, it's really amazing um, how much that's growing. It's amazing, and I think now that Omaha has crossed the million threshold, I think that's going to be a great thing for our city and stuff. So I think that's a lot of good things are. Omaha's got a lot of good things going for it. And I talk to folks that are moving from other markets to Omaha, and I'm telling you what, it really makes me grateful that I live in Omaha compared to some of the other chaos, you know, that you see in other markets and that sort of thing. So let's see. My lease ends in July. I move in with my parents until March of next year. I save up 30K and buy a house with FHA loan. Good plan. Yeah. Excellent. No debt, 90,000 a year. Good for you, B Loper. Excellent. Um, yeah, no, and a lot of folks are doing that. A lot of folks are, um, there's a new trend out there, multi-generational homes, because folks are having to move in with parents and that sort of thing. So you're not alone with that. But good for you. Save up that money. Excellent. Good for you. And then Clark, yep, I never lock no one in for a long period of time because we have to get to know if we want to work together. Yep, because you might want to work with me and vice versa. And that is absolutely true. Yep, I know exactly what you're coming from, Clark. That is absolutely, um, yeah, that's okay. This is A says, if you have to choose between Elkhorn or Papillion for new construction, that's a great question. And um, both have their good points. If I had to choose, hmm, Elkhorn is closer to my office. Here's the real decision, and that is whatever my wife chose. That's the actual honest answer. Is whatever my wife decided we're living. That's where we'd be living. That. I'd have to ask my wife this question, but it's not up to me. Okay. That I know for sure. But if I had the choice, okay, if my wife allowed me to choose, love my wife and all, but yeah, I'm not throwing her under the bus. She usually is tuned out by the live stream by now, so hopefully that everything's all I'll find out when I get home. But if I had to choose between Elkhorn and Papillion for new construction, um, hmm, I like Papillion because it's Sarpy County. Okay. Um, Elkhorn is technically part of Omaha. Okay. Because it was annexed. So Omaha, nothing against Omaha. I'm not throwing shade to Omaha, but Omaha can't annex across county lines. That's a state law. Okay. And there was a big hubbubaloo about when Elkhorn was annexed. They didn't want to be annexed. Okay. They wanted to stay their own little city. But if I had to choose, um, Pavilion really has some great stuff going for it. And I like Elkhorn too. That's a hard choice. Hmm. Hmm. That's hmm. There's good and bad with both with that. I don't know. I mean, we have an office in Papillion too, so I could always change offices. I really like this office. So, um, but here's the other thing too. It's not when you go across to Omaha, it's not like you're going across 20 miles in Omaha. It's not like going across 20 miles in LA or something like that. So I mean, you're driving anyway. So I don't know. That's a really good question. That's probably a video I should do, Omaha versus Papillion. Um, you know, Here's the deal with either Papillion or Elkhorn, the people that live there are adamant about living there. They love living in people in Papillion, they love living in Papillion, and people in Elkhorn, they love Elkhorn, so um, good call. And again, I don't have an answer for you. Okay, good answer. I guess the question comes from being part of Omaha, and the other one is in a different county. Yeah, so there's uh, some people don't like. I don't, you know. Um, let's see what Fred says. We didn't. Well, let's know in the chat what does the chat think? Would you rather say Elkhorn or Papillion? What does chat think? What does the chat feel? We'll find out if we're more Elkhorn or Papillion fans in chat. But we didn't want Elkhorn either. If we had to choose, I'd pick Papillion. Okay, cool. Yep. Um, okay, let's see. Cities in Colorado can annex across county lines. Aurora is in 3 counties. Oh, that's good to know. So yeah, but here's the other thing. Oh, MHO8, they can always change. The legislature can pass things to change things too. So you never say never. So um, NAO7 says Elkhorn. Okay. B Loper says Elkhorn has a better public school in my opinion. Also, my grandma lives out there. Okay, that's gotta say, gotta give a vote for grandma. That's always important. Okay. Uh, I guess I gave you a new video idea. Thank you, A. Sometimes I say the same things and I try to come up with new topics. So if you have any video ideas, that'd be great. As I say I say we as someone living in Omaha. And I'm living in Omaha Channel, living in Omaha. I'm throwing shade toward Omaha, but Exarban, if I had to choose, I'd choose Papillion. Okay. And Exarban is really cool. Back in the day, that used to be the Exarban racetrack. And now it's all that development going on and everything, the Baxter Arena, the new baseball field and stuff like that. So, uh, you know, yeah, it's cool. Exarban is one of those markets that people love living in Exarban because it's close to the Nebraska. I still have a tendency to say Nebraska Medicine, but it's or the Med Center. It's close to the Med Center. It's close to the interstate. It's close to Creighton. It's close to UNO. People love living in Exarban, and really some cute homes in there, and they've really gone up in value. Um, Clark says, I don't know, I'm not from Nebraska. So, okay. Uh, True that they have a great public school. Yeah, a lot of folks love Elkhorn public schools. Yep. Uh, Thanks for taking the time to explain. You're welcome. Thank you for chiming in. I appreciate that. The chat is appreciate that. Counties can't annex other counties. Denver is a city and the county is, so it's landlocked. Okay. Okay. Exarban is for young couples. Yeah, there's a lot of folks starting out in Exarban. Yeah, and they move from out of Exarban too because you don't see as many 2-car garages and they get a premium. Just it's always location, so people love Exarban. Okay. Elkhorn for the older ones. Okay. Let's see. Fred says, I can walk to Kincaid Brewer in 12 minutes and back home in 45. All right, that's great. I'm showing 13 people on today's show, so I really appreciate that. Any other last minute comments or any other last minute questions? Um, oh, B Loper says, are USDA loans still a thing? Last time I checked the map, Gretna was still a USDA rule zone. I have seen that as well, B Loper, but I can't imagine they're going to be that way for much longer. But that's something that uh, is an opportunity out there. I work a lot of Douglas and Sarpy County, so I don't see a lot of USDA loans, but that's definitely an opportunity out there because that's zero down as well. But I believe it has to be below 20,000 in population. But you want to check with the lender on that. Uh, as well. But yeah, that Gretna is growing like crazy. And if you haven't been to Gretna, they have the largest Hy-Vee in the I don't know if it's in the nation, but it's the store itself is 3 acres on the inside. It's ridiculous how big that Gretna is out there. Okay. Um, it's that stagflation. Okay. All right. And do you recommend any builder? I think what you got to do is just there's a lot of good builders in our marketplace. It depends on your price range and that sort of thing. So there's always opportunity out there, and you got to do your due diligence on that and find out what's best for you. Okay, and you go online and there's plenty of people that are going to find fault with any builder out there. I don't care if it's DR Horton. I don't care if it's Celebrity. I don't care if it's, um, a custom builder. There's going to be, and some of that is with expectations. Okay. Um, and you got to go into it with your eyes wide open as far as that goes. Building a home is not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of choices out there. Now, some builders, you don't get as much choices, and sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes that's a bad thing. But again, it's all on what your budget is and that sort of thing, and that sort of thing. So, okay. A says, thanks, David. Keep going. All right. Clark, thank you, Clark, uh, for let me Clark is really close to you're pretty close to 1,000 subs. So hopefully let's get Clark over the 1,000 subs. And he's always in the chat, and I really appreciate that. This is Clark's channel. Let me share this. Oh, let me add the stage. Okay, Clark, he's from Atlanta, and oh, I got my stats thing there. Okay, so Chanalytics. Okay, but this is Clark has some great thumbnails. Okay, and talk all about Georgia. And Clark goes live Clark, you go live Sunday nights, correct? You go live on Sunday nights. I want to say Sunday night, and I always have fun with Clark's stream. But he's at 964, so let's get him over the hump and get 1,000 subs. So check out Clark's channel, and he's on a lot of different live streams and things like that. And I really appreciate him being on the show tonight. So. But thanks, Clark. Let's see. MH. Okay. Let's see. NA07. Appreciate your work. Thank you. I appreciate. All right. And then Fred, great to see you again, Mr. Matney. Excellent content tonight. Thanks a lot, guys. Here we go. Yeah, Clark's is every Sunday at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. So if you get the opportunity, check out his show, and I'll be on the chat because I have a lot of fun on Clark's program, and I appreciate that. So anyway, you're welcome. Clark says, "Oh yes," and that's Eastern Standard Time. So that'd be whatever it is our time. So 7:30 our time. Is it 7:30? So I should know, but anyway. Um, okay, appreciate. You're welcome, Clark. Thank you. I appreciate you being in the chat tonight. So appreciate that. All right, and then Eastern Standard Time. Eastern Time. Yep, excellent. Well, hey guys, we went an hour and 10 minutes. I appreciate everybody chiming in tonight. Hopefully, you got something tonight and got some value. Appreciate the support and liking the channel and that sort of thing. And hopefully, you enjoyed things. I enjoy these live streams. Hopefully, I'll get better at it as time goes by. But anyway, we're gonna call it a night. And you guys, oh, okay. Let's see. It's 5:30 Central Standard Time. I tune at 4:30 Mountain Standard. Okay, Mountain Daylight, whatever that is. Okay. Oh, and we're supposed to get snow tonight. We're supposed to have a blizzard on Wednesday. Today's Tuesday. We're supposed to have a blizzard tomorrow, and it was 70 degrees today. So welcome to Nebraska. So that'll be interesting as well. So, yep. Hopefully. I think we're sitting in a yeah we're getting it we're getting it yeah. Hopefully we have this fictional thing called the Omaha Dome. Okay, hopefully the Omaha Dome is under good maintenance and we get protected from the weather. So we may get frost, but it peters out. Okay, yeah. So time will tell what'll materialize in terms of the weather. But I appreciate everybody tuning into the show tonight and comments and things like that. So that really helps me out a lot. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you next week at 7 p.m. Thanks, and make it a great day, guys. Thank you. Bye.